Welcome to the Self Revolution podcast. This is your weekly reminder to wake up to who the fuck you really are. I'm your host, Breanna Blaney, and it is truly my honor to guide you on this journey of self-revolution and evolution. Join me as one by one, we collectively wake up to create a more harmonious, enlightened, and fulfilled world. Welcome back to the Self Revolution podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here with me. Today, we're going to be talking about consumption and the importance of shifting your consumption habits from unconscious to conscious, and ultimately how your consumption habits impact the direction of which you evolve. Every single minute of every day, you are making choices around what you consume. And those choices are impacting every single facet of your life, whether you realize it or not. So today we're going to shift your consumption habits from unconscious to conscious by talking about, number one, how what you consume literally becomes you, the dangers of desensitization, how what you consume impacts every single facet of your life, your 5, but really rather 6 senses, and ultimately how you can regain control of your senses to make more conscious consumption decisions, and ultimately how that allows you to embody your full potential in life. So let's dive in. So whether you realize it or not, every single minute of every day you are consuming things. And when I really started thinking about this for myself, it was fascinating how many choices I was really making from an unconscious place. And it's been really transformational for me personally as I have started to become more aware of the things that I consume and how that has really changed every single layer of my being, but also how I interact with the external world. So you are responding to things in your environment, consuming things in your environment every minute of every day. And some of those things you have control over and some of them you do not. Say, for instance, you're driving down the road and you have someone honk at you. Obviously, you are consuming that, right? You might respond with anger, frustration, or annoyance, but you don't necessarily have control over the fact that that person honked at you. Yet, many of the things that you're consuming on a daily basis, you indeed have control over, whether that be the food that you eat or the TV that you watch or how much you're scrolling on social media and Instagram. All of those things are things that you're consuming that are within your control. And it's really easy to become kind of mindless about the things that we consume. How many minutes of the day do you just do things kind of on autopilot and you're not necessarily making really conscious decisions around what you are doing and what you are consuming? So let's take a few of these, for instance, food. Food I think is one of the most tangible examples. What you are eating literally becomes you in a very physical way, right? When you're eating a piece of food, you're putting it into your mouth, it's going down your throat, into your stomach, being digested, and it literally becomes and makes up the tissues of your physical body. And not only is it impacting your physical body, but it is also impacting your mind and really all layers of your being. So let's say, for instance, you're eating a strawberry. Your body is being made up of that strawberry. And over time, all of those little consumption choices around the foods that you eat, that impacts the way that your body is structured. So it kind of comes down to this idea of you really asking yourself, is this food that I am consuming something that I actually want to become? The characteristics of, say, a strawberry versus a piece of bread or pasta. And it's not to say that those things are bad. They can be good for you too at sometimes, but it's really starting to just have more awareness and consciousness around the fact of what you're eating is literally becoming you. The same is true for auditory things too. If you think about your favorite song or any song, there's songs that get stuck in your head, right? That's a common experience for me. I can feel that song that's repeating in my mind even right now as I start to think about that. So when you're listening to music, that song is in essence becoming you. It's moving through your mind, and those lyrics, the tune, all of that has an impact on your mind and therefore your being. So again, the question is that lyrics, is the essence of that song supportive for you or maybe not so supportive for you? Social media is another example. When you're scrolling through social media, maybe you see a photo or multiple photos of people in Europe, right? Like enjoying their summer vacation. And then all of a sudden you want to go to Europe, even though you had no interest in going to Europe before. This is just another example of how what you consume is becoming you and impacting your life. The same thing with friends. You are hanging out with people and say you have a friend come over and they have a lot of negative energy. And then when they leave, you're feeling more negative, right? You've absorbed, consumed what has been happening in your environment. So the punchline here is that what you consume literally assimilates into you. It assimilates into your physical body, into your emotions, into your mind and your mental state, into your energy, into your soul, and it ultimately affects your consciousness. And this is why it's so important to really cultivate more awareness of what it is that you actually consume. So in today's world, I think it can be so hard to be conscious of what we really consume because there's so much coming at us at every minute of every single day, right? Technology is such a beautiful thing, but we are constantly receiving notifications and just all of this stimuli coming at us. And I know, speaking from my own personal experience, it's really easy to become desensitized to these things. You're just getting so many notifications on your phone every day that you don't even really realize how many notifications you're receiving, or you are so used to clicking on the Instagram app and scrolling that you don't even realize that you are doing it. So for a long time, I wasn't necessarily making conscious choices around the things in my life. Going back to food, I used to view food as this thing that was just sustaining me and that I needed to survive. And so I would just pick up whatever food. I knew it was important to eat somewhat healthy, organic food, thanks to my mother. But I didn't really take the time to really think about how the food that I was eating was impacting at me at every single layer of my being. I used to also love to drink a glass of wine every night when I came home from work. It was kind of a ritual and a habit, and I didn't really think too much about it. I didn't really feel like I had an issue drinking alcohol, and it was just kind of a nice break after the workday, transitioning into the evening, kind of get a nice little buzz, and over time, it didn't, I started to realize the impact that actually had on me. And I was also constantly doing. I think I was trying to surround myself with people or work to stay in the stimulation. And maybe that sounds familiar to you, that it can almost feel uncomfortable to remove yourself from the constant stimulation because we're so used to it. We're so used to having music on or having the TV on or being with friends or consuming something, food, wine, whatever it may be, that when you actually have a moment of silence, the pause, the break, it can tend to feel actually uncomfortable. And this overstimulation can cause desensitization because we are so used to being in all of the stimuli. I've never really been a huge TV watcher or movies for that matter. But when I used to watch more TV and movies, I loved action movies. Action movies were my thing. And yeah, you couldn't really like get me to watch a rom-com to save my life. It was all about the drama, the thrill, the action, James Bond, Bourne. Those were all, those were all my go-tos. And I still love those movies, but it didn't bother me at the time how violent they were. Like the violence in those movies, I could watch it all and it didn't really seem like it impacted me. I could watch those movies and I could go to sleep or do whatever after them, and I wasn't realizing how they were actually impacting me because I was desensitized to the violence. But the truth is that it was actually affecting me. And all of us have kind of an innate makeup and different energetic types. Can be called your dosha in Ayurveda, and more on that in another episode. But I have a tendency of fire. I have a lot of fire in my constitution, and that can manifest in things, being attracted to things that are more fiery. So if I'm out of balance, I am more likely to be attracted to things that increase my fire, right? Things like alcohol, can be a stimulating thing. It increases that kind of juice. And same thing with like action movies, that competition, that fiery nature, it increases all of those things. And so whether I realized it or not at the time, the consumption choices that I was making was impacting these various other aspects of my life. So maybe I was coming into work with a little bit more of that like grit and competitive nature, or snapping in my friendships or in my relationship. All of those things that I was consuming was impacting these other aspects of my life. When you think about this more on a macro scale, it's kind of scary to think about how desensitized we've become as a society. Now, if I try and watch an action movie, it is generally really hard for me to get through the entire movie. If there's violence of any type, particularly if it gets like too violent, I have to close my eyes because my psyche literally can't handle it anymore. Particularly if there's like violence around women, I cannot even watch it anymore because I'm so impacted by it, because I have become reattuned with my sensitivity. I have spent so much time in more of a meditative state and more of a silent state that I have resensitized my body. And so it's really hard for me to consume those things now. And, going back to the macro scale, it's really scary to think about how much of our population is constantly watching the news or seeing what they're seeing on social media, and we scroll past these horrific images not really caring, right? We're so desensitized to it that it doesn't even register in our being that is really traumatic, that it's kind of scary. And it's not registering consciously, but it is certainly registering unconsciously. All of those things that we're consuming are becoming us. They're becoming you. So this is really your opportunity to change that. And while it can be challenging, I really do view this as an opportunity, because once you start to have more of an awareness around this, it does allow you to have more control around the direction and the things that you're really bringing into your aura and into your being. What you consume impacts every single aspect of your life. In the story I was mentioning, all of those choices were impacting and continue to impact, right? My physical state, my mental state, my emotional state, my energetic state, my soul, my consciousness, all of that. And that begins to manifest externally. That manifests in my overall health as a human being. It manifests in my relationships and the way that I'm showing up with my partner and my friendships and my community. It manifests in work and how I'm able to show up in the workplace and interact with others there. It impacts what I'm able to create and the space that I have to really be creative. So all of these things are really interconnected. And these micro choices that we're making on a daily basis, that you're making on a daily basis to consume, have a massive, massive impact. You're likely familiar with the senses, right? I think it's something that we're all probably pretty familiar with. And the five senses being, your smell, your taste, your touch, your sight, and what am I missing there? Hearing, and your sound. And so these five senses are these base senses of what you're consuming. And these senses impact, and are bringing in all of this external stuff from our environment in every single waking moment. So Ayurveda is the science of life, and it is a sister science of yoga. And it really is what awoke me to a lot of my behaviors that weren't necessarily serving me. And it's an incredible science that has so much insight around how we can start to live more conscious, aware, and supportive lives for ourselves. So in Ayurveda, they focus, a lot on these five senses, and each of our five senses is also connected to a sense organ. And these are very intuitive in nature. When you think about your hearing and the sounds that you bring in, those are coming in through your ears. Touch, the sense organ, is your skin. Sight is your eyes. Taste is your tongue. Smell is your nose. And so through these sense organs, you are bringing in these things that you are consuming. Yet there is the really supreme sense that we haven't mentioned yet, which is ultimately your mind. And in Ayurveda, they call this sixth sense, the great sense, the Maha sense. And this sense of your mind is really what controls all five of your other senses. It's what's assimilating all of this information. It's assimilating these impressions into you. So you can think about how maybe you see a piece of cake and you weren't hungry before, but then you see this piece of cake and it registers in your mind a past experience of you eating cake that you really liked. So now you decide that you're hungry and that you want to eat the cake. So ultimately, your mind is really controlling your sense. Or you smell a flower and it reminds you of a past memory, or you hear a song. And so your mind is really registering all of these external impressions that you have from the outer world, and it's starting to assimilate it into your inner world. What you consume through each of your senses has an impact on you. And I think, when I started down this journey, I started with more of the food. Like that was a very easy one for me to think about, but it really is important to think about all five of your senses. So for instance, sound. All of us, I'm sure you have an alarm clock that is waking you up in the morning. And many of us probably have iPhones. I have an iPhone, and the default alarm on that is incredibly jarring. So you're asleep, you're having this restful evening, and you're laying in your bed, and all of a sudden, like, that alarm clock sound goes off. And what happens? Your heart rate probably begins to increase, and you're like jumping out of bed because that sound was so alarming to you. And just ask yourself, is that the way that you really want to be waking up? Is that really supportive for you in the morning, right? You're coming from this really restful state, and now you're starting your day in this really kind of agitated, heart beating, like pumping out of your chest state. I was doing that too, and the answer for me was probably not. So even something as simple as like changing your alarm clock and how you wake up in the morning. I use the Hatch now and I love it. And it's a very soothing sound. It turns on its light slowly, and it's a much more easeful way to get up in the morning. And that in turn is helping my psyche. It's helping my body really reset itself for the day. Touch. Your skin. Think about when you wear a piece of clothing that is itchy. It probably makes you irritable. I'm thinking about that sweater that I have that it's not like that comfortable, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be agitated if I wear that sweater. Or sight on social media. You see a dress that you really like on someone and you have this impulse to buy it. Or you see a picture of someone that you love and it really brings a smile to your face. Taste. You see the piece of cake or any sweet food, and maybe you feel nourished by that because you have that memory, and the sweet taste is a taste that is very nourishing. Or smell. You smell a smell that like is repulsive, and you're like, ugh, and that immediate face reaction that comes. It's kind of that automatic response. Or I have incense that I burn every morning when I meditate, and I love the smell of that incense, and my body has attuned the smell of that incense to a meditative state. So it's actually much easier for me to meditate. So you can start to really help your body, attune your body to do the things that you want to be doing, more of what you want to be cultivating, by having more of awareness of what you consume. Ayurveda also teaches this concept of your outer mind and your inner mind. So everything that we've really been talking about thus far has been in the outer mind. Your outer mind is the part of your mind that is consuming from the external world. It is the mind that's kind of in the swirling of your thoughts, and it's responding to all of these sensory inputs. And in Ayurveda, this outer mind is called your manas. And I love that word because it's kind of evokes that sense of the swirling state. And if we allow our minds to only stay in that state, we're constantly in this reactive state. You're constantly just kind of being controlled by your thought patterns. And the invitation is to really drop into your inner mind. And the inner mind, from an Ayurvedic perspective, is in out of your head and more into your heart. And this is the seat of your innate intelligence. It's called your buddhi. And it really is this invitation to begin to develop more consciousness around the choices that you make, to start to really cultivate and connect with this innate intelligence that lives within inside you that helps you discern whether something is actually supportive for you versus whether it is not. So when you have so much available to you in today's modern world of what you want to consume, really dropping into your inner mind, cultivating this discernment is what allows you to have more control of choosing the direction in which you actually want to evolve. So how can you actually regain control of your senses and make more conscious decisions around what you consume? Again, I have found this to be a massive opportunity. While challenging, it is truly what allows you, is kind of that supportive force to embody your full potential in life. And this is a journey. I'm constantly trying to cultivate more and more of an awareness of the choices that I'm making on a daily basis around what I consume across all of my senses, and really honing that intelligence in my own being so that I can continue to make choices that are more supportive for me. And there's, again, no right or wrong about this, really. It's much more about you understanding who you are and what is actually supportive for you. And that may be different than what is supportive for me. So how can you do this? Well, number one, awareness is key. So you can begin to actually make a list of everything that you're consuming on a daily basis. And it's kind of crazy to actually do that. if you sit down tonight or tomorrow morning and start to list out the amount of things that you're consuming on a daily basis, it is wild, right? You're consuming everything from your food to the sounds, the radio in your car, the things that you're listening to at work. You're consuming the facial products that you put on your skin and the makeup. I mean, it's insane. It is really, really, really massive. And if that kind of feels overwhelming, you can also just go sense by sense. What are you choosing to listen to, or what are you choosing to eat, or what smells are in your home? And just starting to have more of a awareness of those things is really the first step. The second is to notice the impact of what you consume. So it's really starting to notice the effect that it's having on you once you consume it. So for instance, food. If you eat a piece of pizza, or maybe you eat a whole pizza, what tends to happen after you eat a full pizza? Well, I know for me, it tends to make me, kind of feel nourished and like loved, but also generally lethargic or kind of tired. Whereas if I eat a piece or a bowl of berries, I generally feel like more alive and kind of clear. And so those effects of the food, noticing that, can help you choose food that is going to be supportive for you based on what you want to cultivate that day. Maybe there's some days where I just want to really feel loved and nourished and like lethargic, and that's great. And I can do that and Netflix and chill on my couch, and that's really supportive for me. There are other days where I really want to feel clear and have a lot of energy, and so I probably am not going to choose to eat that pizza. And this, again, goes for every single sense. So just starting to notice the effect of that, like your alarm clock. What effect is that having on your body? Or the music that you listen to when you're listening to more energizing music versus calm and sleepy music, or having more of a sound bath experience. All of those things are having different effects on you. And then the third is to create time for silence and stillness. Going back to just this culture of overstimulation, it is so important to actually give your body, your mind, time to resensitize, to actually process what is happening in your life, what is happening around you. And that is done by actually removing the stimulation. And that is silence, and that is stillness. Even 5 minutes a day can be so, so impactful. And it's certainly uncomfortable at first. I know when I started doing this, it was very uncomfortable at first, but it is so important to be able to give your senses a break, to give your mind a break to actually process. And that silence and stillness is really what helps cultivate more of that innate intelligence in your inner mind. So highly recommend trying to carve out some of that space for silence and stillness, even if it's the next time you're going on a walk. Maybe you always listen to a podcast or you have your music playing. What would happen if you just turned off the music and you allowed that silence to be present and got more comfortable with it? And what I've found in my personal experience is that when I've done that, I have so much more room for my own creativity. I have so much more room to actually hear what my body needs and the direction upon which I want to go in life. And it's a really beautiful feeling to start to reattune yourself from the inside out, to be less driven by the outside external stimuli, just kind of directing all of that energy outward to really reclaim your power, your innate power that's within you, and start to redirect your life from the inside out. So thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It is such an honor, and I know your time is precious. So I'm just so grateful that you have chosen to be here with me today. And I hope that this was helpful and somewhat enlightening in terms of how you really can reattune and shift your consumption from unconscious to conscious, and how that can really help you in every single facet of your life and ultimately embody the person that I know that you are and will continue to become. So if this was helpful for you, please subscribe, follow, share with someone that you love, and I can't wait to be back with you next week. Thank you so much, from my heart to yours.